Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I feel like I'm the last person to do this, but I am finally here to do my review of the Pat McGrath Mothership 11 Sunlit Seduction. This has been quite a controversial palette. I knew I wasn't going to be one of the first ones to get a video out with it, so I thought I would hold off, play with it, get to know the palette, and then come back with my opinion. So I've had it for a while, and I have pretty well-rounded thoughts on it so far, and I'm here to give you those thoughts on this very maligned palette. And if you're new here, my name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a definite soft spot for indie makeup and high-end makeup. And I take a pretty analytical approach to my reviews, my content, and my collection as a whole. And I have new content every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so Sunlit Seduction. It has been very ill-received by a lot of people, and I understand some of the complaints, but I also think some of them are a little unfounded. So I am wearing the palette today. I'm going to talk about what I did, I'm going to talk about the shadows, and I'm going to do some comparisons to other Pat McGrath shadows and some other shadows from other brands, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the formulas. If you are interested in the makeup I am wearing, I'll have it in the description box like always. I am wearing but just to do a quick rundown, I am wearing the Haus Labs concealer. Obsessed with it so far. It is amazing. It really blurs, it's smooth, it's really nice. It just looks like skin as well, which is my ideal for any kind of complexion product. And then I have my Surratt Dewdrop foundation on in shade 9. And then I have Surratt mascara, obviously Pat McGrath on the eyes, and Pat McGrath on the lips. This is the lip gloss in Bronze Temptation. It felt appropriate to wear Pat and this gloss for my lips. Bronzers, Haus Labs, and blush is Maiden's Blush from RMS Beauty. Okay, so you can see on my eyes I have a pretty easy, wearable, kind of bronzy look, and that is a lot of what you're gonna get from this. I don't have every Pat McGrath palette, but I do have a lot of them, and I did pull a few to compare, including one of her quads, Moonlit Seduction, which is the companion to this, and you can see my Moonlit Seduction came fine. This box came all messed up. And then a couple of her older palettes and Utopian Dream, which I think is where we're seeing a shift in her palettes here. I was gonna buy this. I thought about buying this from Pat McGrath's website and getting it quickly and all of that, but I bought this from Sephora. I had a Rouge reward and I had been saving it knowing a new Mothership was coming, so I am very happy that I only spent $30 on this. So that I have that mindset of I only spent $30, but I also have the mindset of these are $130 palettes. How does it compare to the other ones? And what is that quality? What is that formula like? How does that compare? I can't say if a $130 palette is worth it for anyone, because worth it is so subjective. A $130 palette could be never worth it for many people and isn't. And it could be, you know, nothing for some people, depending on your income and what you spend it on and stuff. So I will just compare, give my thoughts and how it feels to me as we go forward. Okay, so this is the palette here. This is Sunlit Seduction. This is Mothership 11. You can see it looks very similar to her last couple. This is number 10, Moonlit Seduction, and this is number 9, Utopian Dream. There's this woman on the front with some kind of, I guess she doesn't have glasses for this one, but she has sunglasses in both of these, both of the like more pinky looking ones. So there's definitely, like, you can see a difference compared to like 5 and 6, which have a different woman with the bees and the crown. So there's, you know, a similar vibe to these with different colors, and she's just kind of modified it a little bit with these winged glasses crown thing. If you're ever confused of which one of these are, because these are both pretty close. I mean, obviously the crown is slightly different. There's some different colors. This one has purple flowers, that one has pink. But Utopian Dream has a microphone on the person and this one doesn't, so that's a very easy, quick which one is it? So obviously my box came messed up. A few of mine have that. It's not the end of the world, but I do keep them in the box. So first I'm gonna go over the anatomy of the palette itself, and then what formulas are in it, and then we're gonna compare it and talk about that. So you open it up and you get the traditional Pat McGrath black lacquered. I still have the sticker on it because it's just gonna get fingerprints. And then the shade names are down here on a card. Some people really want them to put this, you know, on the palette. I don't really have an opinion about that otherwise. And then when you open it up, you get a nice big beveled mirror, which is really nice. A really nice mirror. It's a little, you know, hefty palette to hold up, but if you have it on the table, maybe. And then here is the inside, which I'm sure we've all seen. This follows the standard Pat McGrath formula of having 6 shades over here, a mix of mattes and metallics, and then 4 special shades over here. So the biggest problem people are having is, one, the color story. They say it's pink and everything's pink. I disagree with that statement, that right off the bat, not everything is pink that she's done recently. And some people are saying that these just aren't special. So we're gonna talk about all of that. For a Pat McGrath layout, you'll always notice the first 2 shades are always a highlight shade and the darkest shade in the palette. Sometimes the first 3, it was a black, like literally the same black shade, with different highlights, you know, with different undertones, but they're always kind of a champagne. This one's a really pretty champagne. And then these 4 shades are normally a mix of metallics, like standard metallics, and mattes. So sometimes there's only one other matte, and it's all metallics. It just depends on the palette itself, but that's the layout over here. So for us, we've got Nude Rose, which is this, you know, cooler tone, kind of neutral. I wouldn't say it's a cool rose. It's kind of a neutral rose matte. And then we've got this terracotta matte here. And then we've got 2 of her standard metallics. One is a darker bronze and one is a lighter copper. And I have both of those on my lid today, along with both of these mattes, the terracotta and the dark shade, which is Extreme Vermilion Dusk. Pretty easy, kind of everyday eye look for me. An even easier one would just be like a one and done with one of these, which I do love Pat McGrath's formulas for, because these are very creamy. And then over here you have her Blitz Astral shades. These are called Blitz and Astral, like they have that name in them. There's Astral Pink Fetish, yep, Astral Pink Fetish, Blitz Crimson Ecstasy, I can't talk today, Astral Amethyst Allure. She really likes alliteration, which so do I, but it does make it hard to say the names. And then Astral Gilded Aura. This is the one I've used the most, with second most being this. Really like these, but they are a unique formula to this palette. So in her older palettes, these were a baked shade. So these ones are in a pan, and you can see the pan in there. These ones you can as well, but in the past, these were a baked formula. And I do have thoughts about the baked formula, and I'll do some swatches. But in the last 2 palettes, she switched to a different formula. It's still really sparkly and glittery, kind of like the other ones, but it's not baked, and it's becoming a controversial change. So if I pull up Utopian Dream here, which was the last one to have baked shades, you can see this shade is not baked. This is one of the multi-chromes. She started putting multi-chromes in there in Divine Rose 2, I think. Divine Rose 1, I don't think has a multi-chrome. Divine Rose 2 has a multi-chrome. There's a multi-chrome here. And then these are baked shades here. So you have, normally you would have her driest of the baked shades here. That's like a single color. And then you'd have her more transformative, sparkly shades here. I absolutely adore these. You can see the duochrome in the mirror here, and you can see the multi-chrome there. Really, really love these. And then in Moonlit Seduction, her last palette, she still had a multi-chrome, although it's up here instead of down here. And then she had still these sparkly shades, but they're a very different formula. They're not as smooth and creamy as these, but they are still creamy, but they're just not baked. It's a different formula. So I'm gonna open up my other ones as well, just so I have them all open. I also I have Subversive, I have Subliminal, and I have Decadence. I didn't pull those out. I just didn't feel the need. I felt like a couple old ones and a couple of the new ones was plenty. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera down to the table, and I'm going to do some swatch comparisons of my arms so you can kind of see what the shadows in this look like and how they compare to other shadows from Pat McGrath and other brands. And I'm going to come back up here and finish the review part of it, where I give my thoughts on the palette as a whole and wrap things up. Okay, and welcome to my arm and my table. So I am going to swatch this out real quick just so you can kind of see and I can describe what it looks like. And then I'm going to compare it to some other Pat and some other stuff right here. This will probably be a long video. I apologize. This is why I keep them in their boxes, because this is confusing to see this many identical looking palettes. They do say what they are on the back, but like this one is Moonlit Selection. They do a sticker on the back, but like, no, I'd rather have the pretty boxes. Okay, so I'm gonna do swatches real quick, just so we can see this on my olive undertone and we can kind of talk about it as we go through, and then I'll do some comparisons. So I'm gonna do the 3 mattes. So we've got Nude Rose, very silky and soft, typical matte from Pat McGrath. The Sienna shade. Sorry about my nails, I meant to paint them. But I haven't had time. And then here is the Extreme Vermilion Dusk, I think. I don't remember right now. So those are the 3 mattes in the palette. So you've got the terracotta, like a muted terracotta. You've got this dark, kind of rich red. I would say it's red plum, kind of like a red, but there's like a little bit of a different, like a depth to it. There's like a dark brown, a little bit of a dark brown to it. And then there's this pinky rose. It's not like a bubblegum pink, but it is a pink. So we've got the pink, the terracotta, and that one. Right off the bat, when people said that these look too similar, I was like, how? One is literally pink, and one is, and then we've got the standard metallic. So we've got Copper Dawn, very creamy and thick. This Bronze Hypnosis, I think. And you can see these are the 2 I have, outer corner and then inner lid. There's a little bit more texture here, but these are both really nice one and done shades, especially this if you want a smoky eye. And then the highlight shade, which is just like a champagne. I can't really say much about it. Really rich and creamy, but you can blend the edges nicely. This is why I buy Pat palettes. I love these shades. I love the special shades, but I love these. That's why I like Decadence. And then we've got the 4 special shades. So we've got the Pink Fetish, Astral Amethyst Allure. And you can see there's a little more texture here. This one's a little smoother. The red one, I've already forgotten the name. A lot more texture there. And then the Gilded Aura one, which is my favorite. Similar to, it's like a more intense version of a shade I have from Kaleidos. That like, you can see there's like orange, copper, green, and gold. Really pretty. So here is the pink shade. It's pink with gold, green, blue. It's multicolored sparkle, but you know, the pink base. Here is the purple. It's a little smoother in texture. It's not as thick. Some people said it's basically just a normal Pat shadow, but you can see it's a lot more sparkly. Like there's a lot more micro glitter to it than these are both. These are just smooth. This has sparkle. It's like one of these with sparkle. The red shade. You can see there's a little bit of flake at the edge, but it does smooth out. And then my favorite. So really enjoy this. You can see the green more in person. So if you take away the pink and this, it's not that pink. Like those, yeah, purple and red are close to pink, but even taking that, this is the pink. Okay, I'm gonna wipe off my hand and then we'll do some comparisons. Okay, so my table is gonna be a mess, but I just wanna compare like these. So these are her standard formula. What I wanna compare is talk about is these. So here are some other, you know, special shades. I think this formula is similar to like this in the quad, which people really enjoyed. And I think that's part of why she started putting it in here. It's because people enjoyed it here. So here is Bronze Seduction Mothership 5, and this has 4 of the baked shades, and you can clearly see the difference in texture there. Her first few had these, so they got a blue in Mothership 1, a green in Mothership 2, and the red here. And then you normally have a little more textured one here, and then the topper. So this really smooth, really beautiful, creamy red. Very different from this. One in tone. This one is a little more cranberry. This one's more true red, but the texture is very different. And I think people want more of this. You can see it's smooth, blends out easily, really pretty. And then this one has, you know, all this texture that you have to then smooth out. I think they're both pretty. I am actually more inclined to wear this one than I am that one, but that's a personal thing. You can see more sparkle texture. I like that. And then you compare it to like this shade up here. It's a little more gritty feeling, and this is, I think, the ones that people would complain about being gritty. Similar to this copper here. This one's especially gritty. And you can see, but really reflective. Very lightweight. And then you can see this one is a little more like similar texture to this, but like dry. I would say these look and feel very, they look similar in texture and body. This one is just dry and this one is creamy. And I think this is the result of her trying to make these but creamier, because I saw people sometimes complain about how they were dry and got a lot of fallout and stuff. So she's trying to make them creamier. That's my guess. Trying to, you know, compete with the indie market and stuff. I really love both of these shades. I should wear this one more, this like rose gold shade. And then I think what people are really missing is these, like this and this. These, you can see this one is smooth, kind of like a cross between these two. It's grittier than this, but smoother than this. And then this one is just like a sparkly topper. Same with these. A little grittier than this, but not as smooth as this. Topper. So the formula was very consistent in layout. And you can see those duochrome, topper, like clear bases with sparkly, you know, finishes. I think people are missing these a lot, and I am too. I wish she had more of these. She did do some really special ones in Moonlit and Utopian. I adore these. People complained a lot about these too, about how flaky they were and how messy they were. I saw so many complaints, but they're two of my favorite shadows from her. And you can see that texture. It's a little more like an indie shadow. It's textured, it's flaky, it's sparkly, but I adore these two shades. These two make Utopian Dream 100% worth it for me. And then in Sunlit or Moonlit, you can see they're like a creamy version. So they're not as dry, but they're They're not as dry as these, but they're not as creamy as these. They're more like this formula. I'll just kind of swatch. I'll just keep working up my arm and my hand. You can see it's very creamy and it feels silky. This one feels a little drier. So I think this is a really good formula. I think this is playing with texture and not as nice, but still beautiful. But like, I think they're not as special as these. They're not the transformative shades, but not all of these are transformative. Like that's not transformative. Most of that one, that one, that one, that one, none of those are transformative. But lightweight, sparkly, white effect kind of shades, or these thicker, drier shades. These are, I would say this is pretty on par with those right here. And then this one is kind of a hybrid between these and her regular metallic. It's got a little bit more base to it. It's a little creamier, but it's got the sparkle of these. And you can see that same texture here. This shade here, this is the Venus, the Voyeuristic Vixen shadow, or quad, and this is the Rosefire Nectar shade. Again, it's a duochrome, which these aren't, well, that one is. But you can see it's flaky, but it's still creamy and emollient, and I think this is the same kind of texture as these, but I think a little thicker, a little bit more of a base. I think that's what she's kind of going for with this shade and in general. And then I wanted to compare to some other brands in indie shadows. So here is the new Isamaya palette, and I wanted to compare this flaky red shade here with this one. Obviously not the same, but I mean, I guess I already have that there, so I'll put this here. This is way flakier. The way some people talked about how it was dry and flaky and weird, I expected it to be like this Isamaya shadow, which is definitely a choice. Not everyone's gonna want, but you can see it does smooth out eventually, and you get the flaky edges. That's what it kind of reminds me of, but a creamier, more pigmented version of this. This is creamier and smoother than this. This is easier to work with too. I like this as a shade, but it is, you know, not as easy to work with. And then I grabbed the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette because it does have some of these like flaky but creamy shades. These are the two that broke for a lot of people. And you can see it's much smoother when it blends out, but you do have some flakes on the edges. And honestly, if you're going for sparkle, these pat shades are more sparkly. These are more reflective and smooth, which is, you know, very indie. And then I've got some Divina and Terra Moons here. I don't have a ton of Divina. I would like to get more. But like, you can see some of these are very flaky. And I will say this is definitely not as flaky. So let's see how you have to like kind of smooth it out. I think that's why I don't mind it as much, because I've been using, like that one you really have to smooth out. That was much easier. You get a very different finish, but the way this was described, I expected like that level of flake. And then some of my Terra Moon shades, they tend to be smoother, which is, you know, a perk of Terra Moons and a reason I like them. This one's a little flaky. You can see these are just, I mean, these are more expensive. These are like, you know, $15, $16 a piece. 10 of those is a lot more than this. I mean, 4 of these, this 4, that's 30, that's like $60. That's half this palette, you know, right here in these 4 shades. You get to pick your own shades, but you can see that one's, see, this one's a little flaky. You get a little more, you get more impact with these. I love all of these for different reasons, but Pat is not going to make these. With a mixing medium, you can get these to be really shiny and really vibrant and really reflective and still sparkly like these. But these are handmade, they're expensive to make. These are also not what the average consumer wants or wears very often. I see Pat as trying to like make a user, an average person friendly version of these indie sparkly shades in her palettes. And I think that's just, we have to remember, she's making makeup for her runways and for her, you know, work and for the average consumer to buy. And I love these, but these are not the average consumer. Yeah, so that's some swatch comparisons, so you can kind of see with the way people complained about this red shade. I really expected it to be just atrocious, and I don't think these new ones are that far off. This one is definitely, you know, a little bit more like, I would say like it's a hybrid between this and this. These two are on par with her others, and this one is still pretty. I don't think it's as hard to work with as people have made it out to be. Okay, back to my face. Okay, so for the review and final thoughts, I really do enjoy this palette. I'm glad I didn't pay full price for it, but I'm glad I didn't pay full price for really any of these. I think the most I've spent is $100 on any of them, but most of them I've gotten 30% off or more. I've said this before, but I somehow got palette 3. Why is my brain suddenly blanking? Subversive. I think I need to eat dinner. Subversive I got for like $47, and I am still very happy about that. But I think this is worth the money. I think this is a really beautiful palette if this is your color story and you're in the price range for that. So like I said, I am wearing this shade here, the Sienna shade. I don't remember the full name. Where did the box go? I said stuff on top of it. This is Sienna Mystique. I knew it was Sienna something. It is a terracotta. It's really beautiful. I really like it. It is a good transition shade for me. I can use it first and then put stuff down, or I can blend the edges like I did today where I buffed it around the edges here. Really like it. I really like both Copper Dawn and Hypnotic Bronze. Hypnotic Bronze is really dark and smoky. If you're into that, it's what I have out here on the outer part of my lid. And then I have Copper Dawn, which is much brighter on the inner part of my lid. If I would have started Copper Dawn, it would have been even brighter, or if I used the intensifiers or something, it can be pretty bright. I have footage of me wearing it, I believe. If I do, I'll put it right here. The special shades. I agree they're not her traditional formula and they're not the same, but they are still really beautiful. I think a lot of people are like, okay, these are pretty, but they're not the same. And then people seem to really hate on the red. I don't hate the red. It's not my kind of color. I'm not gonna wear it all the time, which is why I'm happy I didn't pay full price. There are other palettes from her, like Midnight Sun, that I would pay full price for. This is not one of them for me because it's not my perfect color story, but it is someone else's. I just don't really like red eyeshadow on myself that much, but it is a really pretty cranberry color. I do have footage of this. I've worn it a couple times, but I didn't take pictures because like busy, you know, life or whatever, but I did film a little clip of me wearing this on one eye and the purple Astral Amethyst Allure, that alliteration, on the other eye. And you can see it's smoothed out. It is really pretty. I understand why people don't like it though, because it is a unique texture. It is more like an indie shadow to me. It's reminiscent of a shade from Ismea that I have that I showed you in the swatches. And it's a little more reminiscent of some indie shadows. It's a little flakier, a little more textured. And I like that Pat McGrath is experimenting with texture more, but in that experimentation, we're gonna run into shades where not everyone likes it or people don't like it. I've used this on a bare lid and it was fine. I've also used it in this clip with intensifies underneath it. So any kind of primer, glitter glue, mixing medium. She does say mixing mediums help these shades pop in all of her palettes. You don't have to buy her thing, but I do like it. I think if you have really textured eyelids, you're not gonna like that shade, but the other ones will be fine. But I don't think it was hard to work with. I don't think it was patchy. I don't think it was weird. I don't use a brush with these because they're so glittery and sparkly. I use my finger. So I rub a little on my finger and then I press it on my lid, hold it there, and then I kind of tap where I want it. And then I used a brush to blend the edges. In that video, I used a little bit of Sienna Mystique, blended the edges of the brush, and it was fine. I would wear that look. I have worn that look. It's a different texture for her, but I don't think, I understand why people aren't liking it, but I don't think it's as bad as people say. So I'm gonna put, let's see, I'll use a little bit of, I've also worn this shade the most. It is such a pretty peach gold, and there's like a hint of green in there. It's really pretty. I have a clip or pictures of me wearing that all over my lid. Really loved that. But I'm gonna put a little bit of, and then you saw the purple in that one clip. I'm gonna put a little bit of the pink one on my lid. This is Pink Fetish. Again, I already swatched it for you, but you can see it here. It's a baby pink, but it's got gold and other colors to it. It is one of 2 pink shades in this palette. I'm wearing a little more bronzy gold, but you know, whatever, let's tap. So what I'll do is, if it's a really sparkly shade like this, I'll do this. And if I'm wearing, you know, like with the red, I went swirl, swirl, and then press, and then kind of swipe. And you can see, change the look. You can see it's so much more sparkly. I don't have a flashlight to show you, but I am in front of my windows. So hopefully you can see there's the gold shift here. So it's going from gold to pink because I completely covered the other shades, and it is much more sparkly and textured and special. It is not her traditional formula, but it is still a special shade. I'll put a little bit on the side now too to even things out. I think it's getting an unnecessary amount of hate. I think that is a beautiful shade. I don't even like pink that much. And I got a little bit on my lower lash, but that's fine. But you can definitely see it is an intense sparkly shade. If you use like an intensifies or an glitter glue or something, it'll stick, you know, even better. But I haven't had issues with them. With fallout throughout the day, I've never had that issue with her shadows. It's just, you can see it's dimensional, it's sparkly. When I wear these, I get compliments. I've worn them to work, and there's a coffee shop in my building, and I go in almost every day. And they're always like, ooh, like when I've worn this, they've been like, oh, what is on your eyes? That looks beautiful. Like they've specifically asked what it was. And that's what happens when I wear Pat McGrath in general. And not, I mean, that's a perk of, I like using it because the formula and the colors and stuff, but that's a nice perk of when people are like, oh my God, what's on your eyes? It's a nice perk to have someone be like, ooh, what is that? I just really enjoy it. I'm gonna wipe off my hand. Before she switched shadows and formulas in Moonlit Seduction, which I do think these are a really nice pair. I'm trying to pick up both without dropping them. I think they're a nice pair. You've got the cool tone, the warm tone. I really like these together. I think these are a little more intense, but it's also the night palette. It's moonlit. I think that's fitting with the vibe. It is the nighttime Moonlit Seduction. This is the warm tone sunlit evening version. So it's the daytime to evening version. I get it. I understand the vision. Do I think it's perfect? No, but I do enjoy it. And then as far as it being just another pink palette, I don't think it's that pink. If you cover up the rose shade, which is rose and not like pink, if you cover up that and this shade, it's not pink. I saw people say that this was pink, this is purple, this is red. Those are not pinks. This is not a pink. This is not a pink. These are not pinks. These are coppers. These are warm tones, you know, warm terracotta tones. This is a purple. This is a peachy gold. Those are not pinks. I think, but I also see people say everything's been pink since Divine Rose 1, but Divine Rose 1 isn't pink. I have said this so many times. Divine Rose 1 is like neutral, cool tone mauves. Divine Rose 2 is pink. I think because of the name Rose, people just think pink, but Divine Rose 2 is pink. It is your poppy, bright pink palette. I don't own it for that reason. Divine Rose 1, I kind of want some of the shades in it, but I don't need it. And then Utopian Dream is also not a pink palette. You do have a bright coral that's more orange than pink. You do have this pink shade here. This is a copper with like pink, purple, green, gold, like it's a multi-chrome. And this is a cool toned shade. This shade's a little bit like, you know, Divine Rose 1, but not as cool toned. It's kind of a step up. And then you've got a pink here. This is not pink. The packaging, yes, the packaging is pink, but the color stories are not that pink. And I asked my friend Steven to send me their swatches. They're an amazing swatcher. So I have their comparison swatches, and you can see that it's, and I used something to put them side by side. You can see it side by side to Divine Rose 1, Divine Rose 2, all of those. It looks very different. People are saying it's identical. I saw people say that it looks exactly the same as Divine Rose 1. Like, do you, like, I personally, like, if you say that, 1, do you even know what they look like? 2, do you know colors? Like, I'm sorry if that sounds rude, but they're not at all the same. 1 is a cool tone mauve neutral, and 1 is warm tone. Yes, there is, you know, a similar vibe in that there's a little bit of pink in both, but like, they're not the same. I am someone that appreciates nuance between colors, so even if they're like similar, I like nuance and difference between them. I understand not everyone's like that, but I also think that those are objectively different. Like, that's not a subjective, like, I think this is different enough to justify it or whatever. Those are objectively different, and I think these are all different. Yes, there's a similar vibe between, I would say the most similar would be a similar vibe with this, but this is more punchy. You've got the duochrome purple here, you've got the bright yellow, you've got the bright coral. This is a more toned down version of this. I think this is the warm version of Divine Rose. Like, Divine Rose is cool and very neutral and very approachable and was her bestseller for that reason. This is a warm, approachable, neutral palette. Because even last year's is much, like, really sparkly. And like, even this one, I saw some weird comparisons. Like, I remember seeing one specific YouTuber say that the multichrome was pretty and that these 3 shades looked identical. And I was like, one is a purpley silver, one is a like gold, and this one is, you know, peachy champagne. These 2 are kind of similar in that they're like in that champagne gold range, but this is like yellowy and this is peach. But like those, and like these are very different. Maybe on some skin tones they do look pretty similar, but this is a cool tone plum and this is a rosy brown. Like, they're different. And I think people are just too easy to generalize. So, my thoughts. Is it a perfect palette? No. Do I want her to make some more interesting color stories? Yes. You know, Subversive is one of my favorites, up there next to Midnight Sun, and those are some of her more interesting color stories. Midnight Sun is, to me, a really easy palette. It's very daily friendly. It's earthy neutrals, but a lot of people didn't like it, and the reason it keeps going on sale and was the Star Wars palette and was at TJ Maxx is because it doesn't sell because people say it's too hard to use. People say they want interesting colors from her, but then they don't buy them. They wanted colorful mattes from her, and she released them in her holiday palette, and then people didn't like them. I thought the quality was the same. Wasn't my favorite color story, no. It was a little too rainbowy, but it was nice. The mattes are nice. I wanted it to have colorful mattes in her formula. I also saw a lot of people complain about the big shades before she got rid of them. I saw comments all the time saying they didn't like them, that they were too dry and too hard to use. And I think part of the reason she's switched away from that is because of that. She's tried to make them creamier and more user-friendly and experiment with texture and all of that. But I think part of it is that. And I think you had people who loved them and hated them, and now we're doing the same. People love them or hate them. And I don't think there's ever going to be a way to win unless she does 2 of each or something, you know? Like, you're never going to please everyone. But I do think that's interesting, that I saw a lot of complaints about that, so she changed it. Now I see complaints about the change. I feel like she can't win. And this is something I've talked about in other videos, and this is just a side note. There are lots of brands out there that release identical looking things. I mean, ColourPop does it constantly. They dupe themselves, like literally dupe themselves all the time. And some people call it out and say it's stupid and blah, but they still buy them. But they're, you know, cheap. They're drugstore palettes. They're $20. Charlotte Tilbury has Pillow Talk over and over again. I've seen even people I don't really follow or like Wayne Goss has even said, like, these are 2 different named palettes that are identical. Like, swatch them, these are identical. She's literally duped herself, but she also is stuck in that Pillow Talk rut, and people buy them over and over again. Tom Ford, like, he released like those orangey quads this summer. Those were almost indistinguishable, and like, I saw people call it out, but I saw a lot of people just buy them and buy them all and enjoy them. And he has a lot of similar looking things, and he has $90 quads, you know, not that much less than this for way less product. I think I've said this before, but Pat McGrath, as the Black woman in this luxury beauty space, I think gets harsher critiques than her peers. And the only reason that that could be is because of racism and misogyny. And I'm not saying you're racist if you've critiqued her, but I'm just saying, like, as a whole, the collective of the beauty community is really harsh on her and says some really awful things in the comments under like posts like this. And people have been viscerally angry at this palette. But Bean interrupted me. But people have been viscerally like angry at this. And I've seen more like anger and like rage about this palette than I have about, you know, when Charlotte Tilbury releases something that's identical, or Tom Ford releases something that's identical, or any of these brands release something that's like very similar. People like complain, but they often just kind of like shrug it off like, yeah. But you're not seeing the shrug off here. It seems more angry, and I don't care if I get flack for saying that, or pointing that out. I've talked to a bunch of my friends in this space about this, and they've agreed with me. Like, the reaction is overblown to what it is. And I just think that she gets more flack than she deserves. Do I want her to branch away from these things? Yes. Do I want her to make cool, interesting, colorful color stories? Yes. Am I going to buy everything from her? No. And I think that's also part of the problem, is a lot of people are collectors, especially in the Instagram, YouTube community. We often are collectors, buy everything, and then we're frustrated when things are too similar. A brand doesn't necessarily expect you to buy everything. I mean, they'd like you to. It gives them more money. But it's not necessarily expected that you buy everything, and they're not designing things for collectors to buy everything. Especially Pat McGrath with investors and all this stuff. She is designing things for the mass market. And if you look at TikTok, if you look at the reaction, the sales of this, it's selling well. People were excited. People like this color story. It's an approachable color story. I just think we all need to take a step back and remember that, like, yes, some of us collect everything and buy everything, and that's fine if you want to do that, but it's not made for that, and it's not made for you. It's made for a broader audience. And so I think we all need to take that step back and be like, maybe I don't buy this one, or maybe I do because I collect them and it's fine, But you have to remember that, like, brands aren't making things for collectors. They're making things for the general populace, the people that, like, especially at Sephora, they're making things for the people to be in Sephora and come in, see something pretty and approachable and buy it, or pretty and interesting and buy it. They're not, yeah. I think if you look at a lot of other brands, they're constantly releasing things that dupe themselves or are very similar, and there's nuance between them. And some brands, we appreciate that and some we don't. And I understand price point is part of that. But Tom Ford is $90. Charlotte Tilbury is not exactly cheap either. Like, the price per ounce for some of her little quads and little eyeshadows is way more than this. So I think we just need to be a little less emotional and angry about brands and their launches, especially when we don't know the person, we don't know them. Like, yeah, if they release something truly awful or racist or homophobic or something bad, there's a reason to be mad about that and be vocally angry about that. But for it just being a little like another neutral palette, I just think that's just so petty, and I don't know. But sorry about the rants. If you have this, I'd love to know what you think. I've talked to my friends, like I talked to my friend Daria about this. She really likes the palette, but again, she didn't love the red shade. That seems to be consensus, is like, I like them, I don't love the red shade. I'm glad I didn't pay full price for this, but I don't think it's as bad as people have made it out to be with how angry they are. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you think of the palette, if you have it, what you think of the color story, all of that. I just love it. Try to be nice in the comments, and respectful always. But yeah, I'd love to talk about it in the comments below. So let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Really does help the channel and help me make content like this. And I'll see you in my next video.